Well, hello. Welcome to Wellness by Design today. I'm Jane Hogan, the wellness engineer, your host. Today we are talking about the gut brain connection. And I'm really delighted to have my friend here, Dr. Lauryn Lax. Welcome, Lauren.
So excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
So great to have you here. And I love what you're talking about. I love your story. You've had an incredible journey. You can even see on your website, you cut your journey mapped out, and it's like, just like touches my heart. It really does.
Mm,
Let's just start. So you right now, you talk about the work that you do now, and then we can also talk about what led you there. Or maybe you want to go the other way. Maybe you want to start
yeah.
your journey
Well,
and what led you to what you're doing now.
definitely. I can just give a brief overview. So I oftentimes say I'm a former TV news journalist, gone health detective, and functional medicine expert by way of my own really 25-year-long battle with 13 incurable illnesses that no diet, Dr. Google search could solve. And it's really my own journey that really spearheaded the work that I'm doing today as a functional medicine practitioner, a clinical nutritionist, and then occupational therapist as well, which I say is just like a health coach on steroids with optimizing lifestyle. So, but yeah, that roundabout journey begins really back at fourth grade recess. And I was 10 years old with a pink scrunchie in my frizzy hair that my mom made me wear. And all I wanted to do was fit in. And that day, the popular girls invited me to join their gossip circle where they're laughing at someone's ugly sweater, like Melanie Strawn's, or gawking over Eric Arthur's cute, freckly face, who was my crush. And all of a sudden, the topic of weight comes up. And the queen bee says, "Oh my gosh, you guys, I weighed myself last night and I'm 69 pounds. So fat." And then turning to each of us, and she says, "What do you weigh?" And one by one, we had to go around this gossip circle and report to our drill sergeant. And at a healthy 80 pounds as a 10-year-old, I was by no means a fat kid. But when the circle got to me that day, I gulped and I lied and looked down at my feet and just said, "I don't know." And I'll never forget going home that day and standing in the pantry and turning over my favorite Doritos snack pack and learning a brand new language, which was fat grams and calories. And at age 10, my life path took a very sharp turn.
Wow.
And yeah, little did I realize the next 20 plus years I would spend on a roller coaster of those diets, dogmas, doctor's offices, Dr. Google searches, all in the quest for feeling good in my own skin with little to no resolve. And, as the dieting days began, I was like a trendsetter for like diets like the fasting diet, if you've ever heard of it, until the day I passed out in the shower. And then it was on to like whatever was popular at the time, like South Beach, Atkins, vegan, vegetarian, paleo, carnivore, keto. I just did it all. My dog gained like 10 pounds in spaghetti and meatballs weight that I would throw on the floor growing up. And I was just like, could have won a gold in the Stairmaster Olympics. So just the diet mode began early. I was a child of the 90s as well, late 80s, early 90s. So, the low fat era and just like move more, eat less was really what that all was about. And this went on for many years. And in between, like I say, the rice cakes and the diet shakes, I spent 4 years accumulated of my life in hospitals and treatment centers behind bars. Just really being thrust from whether it was hospitals where I was being tube fed and heart rate monitors to like treatment centers where I was shipped away to different states and cities and left for 3 to 6 months, a year at a time, where the typical treatment model for eating disorders at the time and still to this day was Pop Tarts, pizza, and Prozac. And just like the symptom based model that we find like with people that are maybe overweight, move more and eat less, or people with a chronic lifestyle induced disease like autoimmune disease, like just take a pill for an ill. My symptoms and my eating disorder were treated with what made the most sense for food freedom and weight gain, processed foods. And so at a young age, I began to become this really like healthy skeptic of the medical model because it was just, I knew these two polarizing worlds of both the medical model and the diet culture. And there was no balance really in between. And so this went on for years, like throughout my whole teens, I say raised by my eating disorder, and my parents, my family was so supportive through it all and just like remortgaged their house like 2 or 3 times to really pay medical bills, nothing that was covered by insurance. at the time. And so everything really came to a head in that journey when I was 23 years old. I was living in Nashville at the time, had left the newsroom that I had worked in early years throughout college and then post-college to go pursue a doctorate in OT, occupational therapy, primarily because it was my ticket out of Arkansas. I was working at the NBC affiliate in Little Rock, where my parents live, because they wanted me close because I was not well. And I was like, well, what do you do when you're an adult and you want to go live on your own, but you don't have enough money to really live on your own or support yourself? You go to grad school. So I was there for grad school studying occupational therapy. Had no idea what I'd do with it, but woke up the morning before my second year was about to start, only to see a number I had not seen since I was that 10-year-old girl. Only this time I was 23, a full-fledged adult, and my parents weren't standing over me telling me what to do. No doctor was there telling me I was unwell. And for the first time in that journey, 79 pounds actually, it hit me that this is my life. Like, this is what it's come to. And it really explained the chest pains that I had started having lately, all the stress fractures on my feet. I was running at like 10 miles an hour every day on treadmills with stress fractured feet, the gut pains I would get anytime I ate anything. And I was eating probably like 500 calories at the time. So my body was really just shutting down, and I got in my car to go to the gym at 5 a.m. And just began praying out loud and yelling, God, help me make a change today. And I was crying. And just like something inside me too, I started driving to another gym across town. I had like 5 gym memberships. Something inside me like just told me to spin around. Oh, I want to go work out on my Stairmaster day. I forgot about that at the YMCA. And as I'm praying and crying, I pull into the parking lot park. And when I get out of the car, I hear a voice come up behind me and they say, good morning, Lauryn. And I whip around and I see not one, but 9 other strangers walking up to me. And it's 9 gym goers, acquaintances that I've seen every day for the past year. And they really just stepped in and spoke up and said they wanted to help. And so not knowing anything about my health history, or really much more than just a high in the mornings that past year, they saw a girl every day killing herself on the Stairmaster. And they said, we don't know what we would do if we saw you collapse. Like, you've got such a friendly, sweet spirit about you. So they drove me to Vanderbilt Hospital, where walk in, the doctors are like, this is the ER, nothing imminent's happened, no car wreck, no bullet wound. But then 48 hours, I was in the CCU with a heart rate in the near 20s and doctors saying I may not make it. And I know without a doubt, had those angels, I call them my YMCA angels now, not stepped in, I would not be here today talking to you. And so that's really my journey, the foundations of it. And I ended up spending 4 weeks in that hospital on heart rate monitors, feeding tubes, IV fluids, and then going to treatment for another year that, I said I'd stay for 6 weeks, ended up staying for 12 months. And something inside me had changed. And it wasn't treatment that was really helpful. Treatment was the same model that it had always been, but something inside myself was like, and God saying, Lauryn, I'm going to wring this out of you. Like, this has been a long journey. And so I decided when I got out, life was going to be different on the other side. It was really a brain decision that impacted, our subconscious mind really impacts our outcomes. And so I began to learn to walk and crawl again after getting out of treatment in Miami, and heal from the eating disorder. And what I really didn't realize is on the back end of that journey, I would spend actually another 10 years with all those incurable illnesses I mentioned, because of how wrecked my microbiome had been and just all those years of stress in the body, which has really become a fascinating topic for me nowadays, is how dis-ease or stress and imbalance in our life can result in disease in the body, and understanding how much the gut impacts our health, as well as how much our stress levels impact our health. And so diagnosed with like 5 autoimmune diseases and mold illness, Lyme disease, cancer workups, stroke workups, heart problems, diabetes, like the list went on. And I just kept getting passed from clinic to clinic, and the Mayo Clinic turned me away, Cleveland Clinic turned me away. I was too complex. And everything in that next 10 years really came to a head when I learned how to rewire the gut-brain connection, which is a specialty I now practice with my clients, called the gut-brain reset method, to really help clients no matter what their struggle is, whether it's like hormone imbalances, bloating and constipation all the time, or chronic illness, to really break free and holistically heal. And so that's really what brought me here today. 100% remission from everything, even like osteoporosis at a young age, like I'm in my 30s now, completely gone. And so it's just really, I'm so thankful to be here today doing this work. It feels like a storybook now when I share that story because it's no longer how I feel.
Ugh, what a journey. And I mean, heartbreaking. I can't imagine your parents and your friends and family looking on and seeing, feeling so helpless, right?
Mhm.
That you're God's journey, but also the resilience of the human body, like just so much brilliance when we can create the space and the environment for it to heal how it will heal. So, all right, you created this protocol. Was this what you applied to yourself, or is it kind of like you've pulled a whole bunch of things together and now created this gut brain protocol?
Yeah. I mean, it really was like by default, yes, applying it to myself and then learning like, whoa, that something worked. I didn't intentionally practice it, but it really was just my own journey. And then I'm thinking on the back end, several amazing mentors and trainings that I've had in a variety of areas in both functional medicine type of health, functional health, as well as understanding brain science better and neuro-linguistic programming better and
Mhm.
German New Medicine framework better. And so there's other predecessors that have gone before me that really helped me explain even an awesome book I'm reading right now called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. Highly recommend.
Oh, I've got that book. Yeah,
Oh, yes.
an old book, right?
Yes, I think it was in 1891. They do not make books like they used to. I feel like it's all the old school books
Yeah.
that are great.
It's so interesting our own journeys, how like we just like keep going, keep digging in, and you've got so many credentials in all these different
Mhm.
modalities, and now sort of pulled it all together. And I totally get that. I do that as well. And the subconscious mind, I think, is really where so much power is. I've heard Deepak Chopra talk about this, that the subconscious mind, well, the mind runs the body, and the body is not a thing, a stagnant thing. It's a process, right? It's
Mhm.
constantly changing and evolving, which actually gives people so much hope. So let's talk about like all these different modalities, how you pull it together.
Yeah, that's great. So I think for clients, like if someone listening maybe has a health challenge that you're trying to solve, like that's like to get some context, it's always about like figuring out what's driving this first. And I a lot of times say the body is a metaphor or a mirror for what's happening underneath. So symptoms a lot of times are going to mirror. So for example, if I have a lot of chronic gut issues and I've had them for years, a lot of times that's related to an indigestible conflict in my life that maybe preceded that. So something that I could not figuratively digest, swallow, break down. So I'll start a lot of times like, what is the primary symptom you want to workshop? And if you get in your mind's eye, you may have multiple symptoms, but maybe think about what is the primary one. And then when we do root cause work, say in functional medicine, we always start with like wanting to understand the root cause, right? A
Yeah.
lot of times functional medicine, which I sometimes now call green allopathy, will just focus on the physical. So, and it can be very helpful. Like we'll do lab testing, we'll do functional lab testing, even where we look at like microbiome, we look at hormones, we look at detox pathways, etc. So, looking at the root cause from a physical perspective, we can see like, hey, this person has bacteria overgrowth, or they have leaky gut, or they have a parasite, or they have high cortisol, etc. So, thinking about that, we can also do that from the brain level because of how much our brain impacts the body. 90 to 95% of how we feel and how we think is driven by the subconscious mind,
Yeah.
which ironically happens to be in the gut microbiome too. Like your gut microbes, you are more microbe than cell. So your microbes and the gut and the brain are connected, but that's like the critters in here are what's driving a lot of our feelings and our thoughts. So it's super intertwined where the physical actually is also part of the mental. It's vice versa. So yeah, go
You
ahead.
see, like, the physical body as like a it's how I think about kind of a manifestation, right? It's a manifestation of
Exactly.
what we've got going on up here.
Exactly. So I always just say like symptoms are like your body's way of saying knock knock, something is up. So I'll give you a really simple example because I feel like stories sometimes can really paint a picture. Like consider little Johnny, and he's 8 years old, and he eats a peanut butter and jelly every day for lunch. He has for years since he could chew food, and he loves it. And then one day, all of a sudden, little Johnny starts to develop hives and gut issues and just feel crummy. And so his mom takes him to the doctor, and the doctor says, "Oh, must be a gluten intolerance and a peanut allergy. Cut those out. We'll see how he feels because he's eating these every day." Well, little Johnny cuts it out and feels better. Crazy. So symptoms resolve. Well, when little Johnny comes to see me, we understand that he's feeling better now. But also, when we do the work to understand root causes, what was happening in little Johnny's life prior to the onset of him feeling ill, we realized little Johnny was eating a PB&J sandwich at the same time that he witnessed his parents have an all-out fight that led to his dad walking out and eventually their separation and their divorce. And the way that the gut brain axis works is it locks that in. So it begins to associate the trigger, the peanut butter and jelly, with this indigestible conflict. And so when he's eating this, not thinking about the fight all the time later, but his subconscious mind is. And so that's how dis-ease can result as disease in the body. It's just like there's some trigger that happens, and a lot of times there's a gully washer of triggers too. So there's a lot of stress that was happening. But I would say 99% of the time when I ask a patient, what was happening in your life prior to like feeling unwell, there is some sort of stressor that was present. And nowadays I'm able to even go more granular and understand, like, since every symptom is mapped to a specific type of stressors, like I mentioned, an indigestible conflict being related to something that I could not figure solve. So it could be a gut issue, could show up as an eating disorder. Little girl telling me on the playground I'm fat basically at 10 years old, like the way that was an indigestible conflict, something I did not process. It was very shocking. Something I will contextualize here is stress is inevitable. Stress is going to happen in life. It's like we can't live in bubbles. We know this. What separates disease or symptom causing stress from just everyday stress is, when the resources to deal with the stress is like less than the stress load, or that stressor is very shocking, isolating, really catches us off guard. And yeah, we just don't have the resources or the capacity to deal with it. This is why a lot of times in, say, like trauma work, they say a lot of trauma or like things that we deal with stress wise in our lives happens before age 7. Some people say before age 10, before we're really, our brains developed where we're processing it more, able to even understand. There's a lot that happens, even before we are consciously, seemingly aware of it, age newborn, in the womb, even, or 2, 3, where I've done some work with clients to like really identify, figure out times where they come up and think of memories actually when they're cued in certain coaching frameworks that I will ask them. There are things that came up for me when I was workshopping, like certain conflicts or emotions in my body, like fear, anger, sadness, that I had not remembered until like I really was tapped into it, of being like 2 years old, and my first fear being like my mom was separated from me on the elevator. So I got like locked into an elevator at the mall. So it goes very deep. The subconscious mind really traps and stores memories, is what I'm trying to say here, that can result like in related illness or symptomology later. So stress is inevitable, but it's really shocking, or we don't have the capacity to deal with it, that it resolves. This can also apply to acute things as well, though. Like, so today in Austin, it was like 40 degrees the past 2 days. I hate cold weather so much. And it really was very shocking to me. I start getting like that feeling of congestion. A lot of times congestion is related to a this stinks conflict. So my subconscious mind processing this stinks. And I will say, I really don't like cold weather. You're used to it more than we are here in 80 to 100-degree Austin. But why does cold and flu season happen usually in the winter, even if we're indoors mostly? Like, we're not really outside more. We could say something about mold here, but also around this stinks conflict, we're transitioning from a beautiful, awesome football weather, fall fest fall, to like a dreary, blustery winter. And so subconsciously thinking this stinks would be an acute stressor, or I developed a stress fracture. Some of your patients may relate, your clients may relate to this from an inflammation and chronic like physical pain, developed a stress fracture on my right foot. And I run most every day at this place called Barry's Boot Camp. It's like an Orange Theory for just people who love being athletic. And nothing had changed in my routine, but all of a sudden I get this stress fracture. Lasted for 12 weeks. Most stress fractures should last 6 to 8. Nothing had changed in my routine, diet, lifestyle, eat very healthy, do all the things. Well, come to find out when I did the work, a lot of times stress fractures are related to an immobility conflict or bones, the inability to move forward on my, legs. Your legs are what move forward. When I do the work, what was going on in my life prior to me getting the stress fracture? Come to find out that same exact week that I got the fracture, a guy came back into my life that I really liked for a long time, like 2 or 3 years. And I was seeing him every day just at my co-working space. He had joined the space. He came back into my frontal lobe. And so my body and my brain are being reminded of this immobility and to move forward. And that stress fracture lasted for 12 weeks until the very exact day that I made up my mind that guy is really narcissistic and I am moving on. I am worth more than this. Literally that day, the stress fracture went away and it was just symptom resolved. And I've seen this happen so much with my patients where I believe healing can happen more quickly. A lot of times when we make the connections alone, because the inflammation from the gut and the brain are no longer sending those signals. And your body's like, thank you. You understand what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah. I'm curious. This sounds, so, I mean, it's a kind of different language, but it sounds really similar to a book that's been around for a long time. That's Louise Hay. You can,
Oh, we love Louise Hay. Yeah.
yeah. So similar types of things, that there's an emotional kind of connection to physical things that are going on. So I know the audience is probably really curious. A lot of people in my audience have chronic pain, a lot with arthritis, gut issues as well. Are there any, can you tell them like chronic pain? Is there
Yeah,
emotional
definitely.
thing?
Definitely. So, I'll contextualize this and talk about what symptom that's related to. So this science was developed by a Dr. Hamer. He's a German physician who was very allopathic, very much like not into woo-woo at all, like traditional doc. And he had developed cancer right after a very big stressor where his son had passed away in his arms all of a sudden. And like, I think he had been wounded by like a bullet wound or something like that, or there's something really traumatic that had happened. He developed testicular cancer, ended up getting over it, like doing treatments to get over it. But what he began to realize is like, as a general physician, his testicular patients that would come into him had a similar experience. So they had had some sort of separation in their life prior to the onset of their cancer. And so he got really curious to then begin to like notice if there are any themes in other like similar symptoms of other patients. So his IBS patients, for example, and indigestible conflicts. His like patients with like chronic skin issues, he found like attack conflicts. So whether it was like attack, meaning like a figurative attack. So like a lawyer being in an all out fight with like a opposing party that, or maybe his business partner that had stolen money from him. So going into a lawsuit, or like think about teenagers feeling under attack from a self-worth perspective. How many teens get acne? And so that skin acting like armor for the body throws up a defense. And so he began to map out the brain for like over 1,000 different symptoms. And then to take it a step further, he would do CT scans on his patients to see what was happening brain activity wise. And what he noticed is there was concentric rings that would develop in certain parts of the brain connected to the specific tissue where the symptom was showing up.
How interesting.
So, for example, with gut issues, it would be in the brainstem. He would see these like imagery, concentric rings are just kind of like grayed out like white spots, and the brainstem connected to, say, the small intestine. Or he would see those concentric rings in the cerebellum connected to the skin. And so it's what led to, like, that framework led to the development of something called German new medicine, or something that I call gut brain science, and understanding again how dis-ease in our life can show up as disease in the body. And this doesn't have to be separate from the physical symptomology as well. And it goes very deep, but like, my love for the gut explains a lot of it and how the gut runs the body. part of his framework explains how the only time that the gut bacteria, which run your immune system, which run the inflammation system in your body, run your detox pathways, they run everything of your body. The only time that they get overactive is when stress has happened. Kind of if you poke a wasp nest, like the wasps fly out in a tizzy. And so depending on what that stressor is, it would explain the physical symptomology that's showing up in the tissues and the organs. It's not just like, okay, I'm stressed. So it goes into the granular level of how it physically actually will show up as well. We do have X factors like getting hit by a bus or going to Mexico and drinking bad water. It doesn't negate that physical symptomology. It can just happen from pure physical symptomology. However, if you have chronic health issues, in particular, this is really powerful work because a lot of times my clients are doing all the things. They're eating well, they're taking supplements, they've gone to many functional doctors, and still they're not feeling well. It's like, what has not really been unearthed? And as Tony Robbins says, success is 80% mindset, 20% tactic and strategy. And as I've alluded to, like, I think it's even more like 90 to 95% of your subconscious being run there. So the brain has a big piece in our healing still. So for chronic pain and inflammation, generally, like, it can depend on where that pain is showing up. But overarchingly, a lot of times that's related to a self-devaluation conflict. And so self-devaluation, i.e. us being the hardest on ourselves. I'm not good enough story is quite common. I see this a ton with, I gave the example of osteoporosis a little bit earlier, but like, why do so many more women have osteoporosis than men? I mean, we could say it's hormonal. However, more women than men that I know tend to be less egotistical or just like hardest on ourselves. Same thing with autoimmune and overgiving. And same thing with autoimmune, which is an inflammatory process as well. The body, mimicking our own self-evaluation, begins to degrade its own self and tissues. And then with bone and inflammation, there's that degradation as well. And then where it gets more granular is, where is that pain showing up? So like I gave the example of my foot earlier, like there's pain and inflammation there on my right foot, which I'm right-handed, connected to my paternal side, my partner side, my boss side. So as a right-handed individual, on knowing musculoskeletally, things on that side, a lot of times are going to be related to a conflict of immobility. If you have right shoulder pain, just chronic pain, like, do you feel like you've, like, self-evaluation, been carrying a load for yourself on your shoulders? Like, I'm not good enough in maybe my, what if it's your marriage, or if it's as a mom, or if it's in your work. Like, these are things that mom side would be more like left-sided, but right, unless that's your job. Like, if your job is the primary breadwinner, or not primary breadwinner, but that's your primary job as your mom, as a mom, you associate that more with your boss side. That would show up if you're right-handed on that right side.
Okay. So interesting, Lauryn. And so, I find this fascinating. I've seen the same thing, like I've gotten to these conclusions as well. It's really, really interesting. So people may understand where it's come from, but how do they release it? How do they release
Yeah.
it?
Well, there's many, many ways to go about it. It's a process that I have, but the number one is like the awareness alone can sometimes be just what the body needs. It's, again, like that olive branch from the inflammation. Your body's just like, caught me. Yeah. Like hide and seek. If you ever, like, you finally catch the person where they're hiding, the game's over, you switch. So your body's like, thank you, you found me. Kind of like if you're standing in an ocean in the shallow end and you're just facing the other way. So the wave keeps hitting you from behind. What happens? You keep falling forward because you just don't see the waves coming. But if you make it about face, turn to face the wave, you stay grounded. When the wave comes, you brace yourself so it doesn't knock you down as much. So sometimes just that awareness alone is like very healing in and of itself. And this is why placebo effect can work, because if we think we're healing or we're taking back the reins, there's that direction that's corrected. Or sometimes, like, if you go and you just get the assurance from a doctor, like you're okay, like you feel better. If you've ever had an ER or something that sent you there and the white lab coat just says like nothing is wrong, you're like, okay, I'm okay. And so sometimes it's just that awareness, or even why diets or supplements can work It's like if we think the medicine is healing us or the food is healing us, like this is why people become die hard sometimes with like carnivore, paleo, keto, whatever it is, because it was the thing that helped them. And there's definitely a layer to like the all physicality of it. But if we think it's helping us too, it can also be helpful, even if it's maybe not as productive anymore from a diet. So that's number one, is just awareness is the first step. Number two, like if you want to get a little more granular and take back your power, it's really that using and tapping into that power, that subconscious mind too. So number one is I will help patients identify what is the story or the limiting beliefs you're telling yourself or that are wrapped up in this. Sometimes it's a lot of times it's our identity too. It may not be even a story we're hearing, but it's like, if you've ever heard of the concept of self-fulfilling prophecies, we just expect something to be as it is. We're related to that specific conflict. So say, for example, I don't feel like I'm a good enough mom. That's my limiting belief happening right there. Residual, like related to my shoulder pain or something like that. And so I would brain dump any limiting beliefs you have just about your health or yourself. That would be a great place to start. You don't have to go even granular into like thinking about related to that symptom. Just think like health and self. What are my limiting beliefs? Number two is then asking yourself, well, what do I want instead? And so I call this like gut love. So we first tune into our gut, figure out from an awareness perspective. Number two is we identify like, okay, what are limiting beliefs I have about my health or the situation as well as myself? And then number three is like showing ourselves like gut love, like really asking yourself, what do I want to feel instead? Or what do I want to think instead? And so getting a really clear visual about, and it sometimes can be just the anecdote. If you wrote down a lot of limiting things or that you're currently feeling, just doing the opposite. And writing those out and I am. So like, I am healthy, I'm strong, I'm resilient, I'm happy, I'm free. And really just like brain dump everything you want as if it's Christmas. And you can also get granular. Like I want to wake up every morning and just have tons of energy. I want to go to the gym and be able to like lift X amount of weights. I want to have a thriving relationship with my husband. I want, like, you can get as granular into your life. It doesn't have to just be a feeling that you want, but what do you want your life to look like? So you brain dump what you currently don't want and have, what you want instead. And then the last piece to that puzzle to really begin to just like something you can take away from today's talk is to come up with 3 power statements. And these are my gut love statements that really speak power back into what it is you want. So, and how you want to feel. So I would imagine with pain, it's like, I'm light, I am pain free, or I am, what would you say? You're very familiar with.
Yeah, so I know because you don't want to put the negative word in there, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'll say, I'm able to do all the things I want to do. I'm healthy and strong. I have freedom in my body. That
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm able to do all the things that I want to do. I'm healthy and strong. I have freedom in my body. So that's great. 3 statements. You write those 3 statements down that really feel like when you say them, they just give you a little bit of spark of like, that's really what I want. And it feels good to say. It may feel a little scary. So believe it. But that's what I want. And then lastly is just like speaking that gut love statement in rounds. And sometimes a lot of times will fix this into the day to start, like morning, evening routine, or around times of flare. Like if you're like, oh, you've been down, you feel that back pain. Or when you do work out, like you feel the pain more. To really, that's where you vibe at that frequency. To really, it's kind of if you've ever seen the cartoons where they hit a cartoon over the head with a bat. It's like and they get those little stars. It's like the more we say it, it's like flexing a new muscle. And your brain begins to lay a new pathway of belief that is going to run the body. So it's the subconscious runs the body. The conscious mind takes like the order. It's like the captain, or basically says, this is what we're going to do. So you're consciously deciding this is what we're going to do. The subconscious is what takes the order. So it's like, okay, great. This is what we're going to do. Yeah. And then you can repeat that practice. Like when I was overcoming toxic mold illness, for example, and I would go into like a moldy hotel when I would travel, begin to have my shortness of breath, asthma, histamine reaction. I would say, I'm strong, I'm resilient, the mold can't hurt me. I'm strong, I'm resilient, the mold can't hurt me. And I would do that for 5, sometimes 10 minutes until eventually to the point now I can travel And I don't worry so much about that because I know I have this powerful tool inside me to knock it out.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So
I love it. Oh my gosh, Lauren, so interesting. I know, well, I find it super interesting. And I think the people that are watching, listening also be so interested in this whole connection between the mind and the body. And it's not like woo woo. It's there's
science.
sides. I really like that you talked about how he was also doing the CT scans and
Yeah,
making those connections too. So thank you so much for all this today. It's really
definitely.
eye-opening. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you really want to make sure the audience hears?
No, I think we've really talked about a lot in a little time,
We
basically.
have, we have. Okay, so one last question I always have is what's the baby step someone could take today that's going to begin to initiate the healing in the body, get the body doing its healing?
I think just that awareness step is huge. So if you just get curious, be your own health detective and ask yourself, what was happening in my life prior to not feeling well? And kind of if you can map that out from the stressors that were happening back to like that awareness being a huge healing part of the puzzle, I think that would be a first step.
Mm, that's so true. I mean, for me, that rheumatoid arthritis came on a year, almost exactly a year after my mother died suddenly. And I knew it was related, like, it just
Yeah,
did, right? So,
definitely.
so I that's what made me so curious about exploring all this because I knew that that had to be connected.
Yeah,
So I think what you just said is really powerful for other people. Like, look back, what was going on in your life emotionally, specifically, right? That this was any strong emotions that happen, and you see a connection there. All right, I love that, and I
definitely.
know you've got a gift for the audience, which is a 3-day gut cleanse. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So if you want to get a toe in the water with what it means to like heal your gut or to reset your gut, my 3-day gut cleanse is a great place to start. And just will walk you through the basics of really beginning to rewire the gut brain connection for one, as well as some physical, like nutritional supports and lifestyle habits that will help.
Love that. And we got the link there. So that's perfect. Okay. Where can people find out more about the work that you're doing and where's
Yeah.
place or several places to find you?
Definitely. So drlauren.com is my house and at Dr. Lauren on social media. Lauren is with a Y as well. So
Mhm.
DRLAURYN.com instead of E. And then Total Gut Reset and totalgutreset.com is rolling out in January, which is I have a whole group program as well as book and supplement line launching in the new year.
Fabulous. Well, you're doing great things and really helping so many people. So I really love what you're doing. And thank you so much for being here today, Lauren.
Thanks so much for having me. This is so fun.
It has been fun. I've really loved it. And to the audience watching or listening, um, take what Lauren has talked about today. See if you can be that health detective she talked about and figure out what's going on with you. And please share this with other people that need to hear it too. And leave us a like or leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. All right. Thanks everyone and have a great day.